Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of From Page to Stage. I'm your host, Wendy Corner, and this podcast is for you if you are an author, if you're an entrepreneur. Because if you're an entrepreneur, I'm pretty much certain you're an author. Because let's face it, if you have a business book out, great. If you don't, you may be in the process of writing one, but you may have a blog. That's a published work. And I can guarantee you're on your socials, aren't you? So yes, you are an author. Welcome. Now, you may have done the page bit, and you may have done the stage. Or you may have done the page and not quite there on the stage yet. Either way, this podcast is for you. So welcome. Now, today, really excited to introduce to you a wonderful lady by the name of Jen Porteous, who is now in Miami. I could tell you a fair amount about her, but you know what? She knows herself better than I do. Jen, over to you. Introduce yourself. Tell us a bit more about who you are and what's got you to this stage in life.
What do you want to know, Wendy?
Give us a cliff notes.
Well, I might be living in the south of Florida, but I'm actually Canadian born and raised. I grew up in the prairies in Canada and then moved myself out to the West Coast. And from there, my life, I don't know how to describe it. It went up and down, it roller coastered, and then eventually kind of just took off like a rocket when I found my purpose and what I really wanted to do service-wise in the world. And since then, it's just been this lifelong dream coming true. And I laid back in my pool just a couple of weeks ago with my kids and thought, man, I have everything I've ever dreamed of. And how many people in their life get to say that? So I consider myself very blessed and very fortunate. And I think it's hard to capture it in language until you fully experience it.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. Thank you. Thank you. Well, you and I first met on Your Words Have Power.
Yes.
Okay, audience, we've got some history here. Jen came onto our Your Words Have Power platform, which is when we did 10 minutes for you to spread your message to an invited audience for feedback, and feedback from the audience and feedback from me. Kind of like a stepping stone towards a TEDx. And Jen came on that show, loved what she was doing, and she came forward for the MAD book, The Making a Difference, Ways to Magnify Abundance, Vitality and Freedom. She was one of our precious authors, and that book came out last year on August the 8th. So this is, I said she'd do the introduction. I'm actually doing that bit of the introduction for her. So this is one of our esteemed authors from the MAD book last year. So tell us a bit about what prompted you to start writing.
To start writing the book specifically?
No, writing full stop. I mean, have you been writing since you were a child? Tell us your writing history.
That's an interesting thing to reflect on, because in my life, I've always journaled. I feel like in my mind, all women do that, but apparently not. The more women clients I have, the more I find out that no, girls and women do not default to journaling or even keeping a diary. I always did. And there was something years and years and years ago, a friend prophesized over me and said that I was going to have books, plural. And yeah, and I thought that was just a hilarious statement to imagine myself as an author, because the idea of it was so grand. You know, the idea that you had to take everything that was inside of you and make it make sense and put it onto a page and have it capture a reader and send a message. So when I started the business and it was really taking off, I was really called forward to put something down on paper. And before I even met you, one full year before I even knew that you existed, Wendy, I wrote several thousand words towards a book. And then it just stopped. It just stopped coming. And then you came into my reality, into my field, and when you wanted a chapter, I already had it written. So
Yep.
yeah, it was kind of just that seed that I planted a year
Mm-hmm.
before I even met you, before I even knew what I was going to do with it. And then the opportunity presented itself, and I still had to call or answer the call to action to do something with it.
Yes. Okay. So that was a chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a solo book percolating?
I do. It's a work in progress.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you have a projected publication date?
It was originally supposed to be this coming spring. I mean, if I put
25.
if I put my notes down and really do it, of course, anything is possible. Although that does seem very overwhelming for me at the moment, but ideally by the end of next year is a goal for me.
Okay. So 2025, let's leave it as a 12-month window.
Yes.
Audience, we're going to hold her to that, aren't we? One of the things I'll introduce this to you now, audience, we have dynamic show notes. So all the information that we have on the show notes after this, when an author tells me, oh, I've got something else coming out, it may be a program, it may be an extra book, it may be all sorts of things that they've got coming up. They get hold of me and I change the show notes and then do a blast on socials and go, do you remember that wonderful interview I had with Jen Porteous? Well, she's got something else out now. Go back and check it. Oh, and while you're there, go and check out the podcast interview. It's a good one. So that's the sort of thing I do. So audience, keep up to date. Go back and check regularly. Okay, so we've got a solo book in the offing, but that's not what's occupying all your time, is it?
Absolutely not.
So, spill the beans, girl. What are you up to?
I'm up to a few things. I currently just launched a brand new program for women in business, especially faith-based women who want to learn how to do business the feminine way instead of like a man,
Mm-hmm.
and how to do it under their faith and tap into kingdom wealth and all the things that are tied in with that. I also have a women's conference coming up in Nashville in October to start seeing women in person, because I've found that there's been a big demand for that. A lot of women really want to spend time in person, and the breakthroughs that they have and the revelations that they have are really profound when we're in person as well.
So, forgive me for interrupting. Are you actually running this summit?
I am.
Conference, I beg your pardon. This is your conference.
It is. It's mine. Yeah.
Fabulous, fabulous. And you have other speakers coming along?
I have two other speakers coming along. One is a surprise male guest speaking on the other side of things, what it's like to be a man, in a dynamic in a marriage, and how it's relatable to healthy communication in marriage, and what happens when there isn't and what happens when there is. So I think it's really valuable to have a male perspective in there. Women are really, really wanting to hear from the men, and there's very few men speaking about it. So I'm very excited to have him on. He's a very good friend of mine for the past decade.
Cool.
Yes. And he's new to public speaking, so it'll be great. I'm really excited to have him. And then one of my students felt very passionately about this work and has began her journey in mentorship and coaching, and she started a program in her church. And so I invited her in to do a speaking piece as well. So it's gonna be really fun. Yeah.
How many days is it? Is it a 1 day, 2 day, 3 day? How long is your conference?
Yeah, it's a 3-day, the third day being a business exclusive for women who are entrepreneurs or leaders in their field, and they want to sharpen their skills or get some insights and leadership around how to lead women differently as well. But the first 2 days are for anyone. So if you're an entrepreneur, you can sign up for the third day if that suits you, but otherwise you can just have the 2 days.
Cool. Audience, those links will be in the show notes as well. So if you happen to be in Nashville or anywhere in the States and fancy a little trip, that's where you're heading. So the third day Is that going to be pulling on the information that you in the program that you've just set up?
Yes, it's going to be kind of like a little taste test. I ran a master class.
Invitation to come and join you in the program. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I didn't initially set it up that way. The Brides of the King program that I'm running online was an afterthought, an after launch for Nashville, which
Mhm.
was really fascinating to see how that unfolded. But I ran a master class this past Sunday on the 11th,
Mhm.
and it was all about money and multiplication in the feminine system. And the breakthroughs in the women who were in there have been phenomenal, and the testimonies have been incredible. And it was really a calling to do more with that. So that's where we are now.
So that was the rubber stamp you wanted.
It really was. Yeah, it was
Excellent.
really an affirmation that it needed to be developed further.
Beautiful, beautiful. So we've got that coming up in, when did you say? October.
Brides of the King, yeah,
Yeah.
at the conference. They both launch in October. So my conference is October 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And then the online program, Brides of the King, we launch, first day is October 11th.
October's a busy month for you, my God, isn't it? And September will be for the promotion.
Yes, September
Cool.
is always letting it do its thing in the wind down of summer.
Mhm. Have you got lots of podcasts booked?
Not at the moment, but it's interesting because as soon as I launched all of these programs, I've had numerous invitations out of nowhere. So it seems that God wants me to speak and wants me to put it out there in a different way than I usually do, which I asked
Mhm.
him for because it's a bigger calling.
Yeah. Enlarge my borders. Yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. So we've got, I mean, we've spoken a bit about your writing, and you said you've been diarying, journaling since you were quite young. Can you remember when you first started journaling?
I remember having my first diary when I was 10. Yeah, I
And
remember that.
was it just a case of Friday the where are we? Friday the 16th of October, August, Friday the 16th of August, I did XYZ. Was that the sort of
Oh,
diary you included, or did you right from the start add in your feelings and
it was always feelings based, which is very fascinating to observe in myself because as I got older, it became more documented.
Mhm.
Whereas when I was younger, it was extremely feelings based. It was all about how I felt, even if I did include the details of the day.
Mhm.
Oh, me and my mom and dad went here, or this happened at school today, or my brothers are really annoying. It was all feelings based until I got a little bit older, and then it became a little more, what's the word? Yeah, like a little more,
Verbal.
yeah, a little more topside, a little more in the brain. The word legalistic comes to mind, but that's not quite right. It's just like
Okay.
very formal. It was very formal.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Right. My parents passed, well, my father passed 2 years ago, my mother passed 5 years ago now. And hang on, where are we? 23 years since my father went. Anyway, irrelevant. When the house was being cleared, I discovered, my brother discovered they had kept all of my old school books right back through primary school. And looking through the diaries, they were, because we were encouraged, we had to write a diary entry at school. And it was all about a paragraph, and so did this and so did that. It was very factual. The concept of journaling was not something that was talked about in the UK. So I find it fascinating that you grew up with that. Did you have that modeled by your mother?
Not my mother, my grandmother,
Your
actually.
grandmother, right?
Yeah, my grandmother, who will be 100 this year.
She's alive.
She is. She is alive.
Whoa.
Yeah, 30 plus great grandchildren. Yeah, we have a very large extended family. It's really beautiful. And my father is the youngest of six. And so my father had 3 children and myself being the oldest. And we lived very close to my grandmother. And every single night, she would sit down at her dining room table, and it was just a binder full of lined paper. That's all it was. It was nothing, none of these fancy journals we have now, where they're leather bound and they have all this embossing and these beautiful gold leaflets. There's none of that. And she would journal every single day. And when I remember being very little, 5, 6 years old, and she would be sitting there writing, and I remember her penmanship. And yeah, that's the only seeding of it that I can think of and modeled to me, because my mom never really journaled that I can recall.
Yeah. Oh, that's really precious. That's really precious. Did you get to read any of her journals?
I did not, and I've never asked.
Right. Yes, of course, she's still around, so she may not be happy about that thought. Maybe after she's gone, but depends on how much she wants to share. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because that's an interesting thing when I've said to speakers who are very reluctant about doing the speaking bit, or the authors in particular, and I've said, well, why don't you write down your feelings? Oh, I couldn't possibly journal. But why not? Well, somebody might read it. And that's a problem because, well, I don't want my innermost secrets coming out. Well, if you're that worried about them, write them down and burn them.
Yeah, it's very intimate. It is very intimate. I think it's a thing too, where women are sometimes afraid to be that intimate with themselves.
Yes.
Because if you just let yourself free write everything that's going on inside of you, then it becomes very real. It's very tangible, right? It metabolizes through the feminine system, and it can be confronting, and you start crying, or maybe, you're so happy that you can barely hold it. But it's a process for a woman to be that intimate with herself. And a lot of women are uncomfortable with it, to the point where they don't even know how to start.
Well, again, it's not something that you don't see it modeled on TV or whatever, because so much of the world around us is in masculine energy.
Yes.
And you're bringing in the counter of definitely the feminine side of things. Yeah. I know personally, I've been so in my masculine all the way through life, because there was strong masculine energy at home, not only in my father and my brother, but my mother as well. So all the touchy-feely stuff, I mean, come on. That's, and add to the top of that, I'm British. I mean, we don't do feeling. As one of my coaches has said in the past, stop being so bloody British. Feel. Okay, sorry, this is your show, not mine.
No, but you're right. Our society in a lot of places in the world, not all the places, I find that culturally there is a lot of embracing of the feminine and the femininity, but in a lot of Western society, Australia, the UK, you're right. It has been a template of masculinity, which masculinity is healthy, but what's happened is that it's swung so far that women don't know how to connect to themselves as women anymore.
Yes.
And that generational wisdom that used to be handed down from our grandmothers to our mothers, to their daughters, and so on, has been lost. And you can see it if you go back in time. You can see where that starts to fall off, and where it's modeled and where it hasn't been.
Do you think that could also be partly because of the fact that we don't maintain the family units in the same way? Well, I mean, hello, where am I? I'm in Nottinghamshire at the moment, but in the last 5 months, I've lived in 10 different places, none of which are anywhere near where I grew up. I mean, 3 different continents in the space of 2-3 months. I'm wondering whether partly the disconnect from the extended family has had something to do with that. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
I think the extended family plays a role, but even within the nuclear family, where a mother and a father, or a man and a woman, are really comfortable with having a role. And that word makes people really uncomfortable. You have a role in your marriage, and when they become androgynous, right, everything's neutralized. No one knows what their role is. And so if there is perhaps piece of leadership that's missing from the husband, or perhaps a nurturing aspect missing from the mother, then they'll try to fill each other in, sort of, if that makes sense. Like, or the family breaks down because there's poor communication. You know, a woman becomes very hardened. You know, she's not in her own essence as she is as a woman, and a man doesn't know really what to do with that, and no one knows what they're doing, and the unit breaks down. So now we have absent fathers, and we have absent mothers, or we have part-time parents, and we have all those things. And if you have a single mother who's trying to provide for her children because there's an absent father, now she's trying to fill two roles, and one of those roles is not hers. And same with fathers, you know, if there's an absent mother, he's trying to fill two roles, and one of those roles doesn't belong to him. So there's, you know, those fragments that come down the line. And I like to say that it's not really anyone's fault. It's just that we don't know better. All the wisdom has been lost. You know, people don't know what they don't know until they do. And then it's your, you know, your responsibility to do differently when you do learn. But I think people just don't know.
And again, that flies in the face of modern culture, doesn't it? Because we're flattening out the curve on everything.
We are.
With the advent of feminism, I think it's swung the other way, to the extent that anything a man can do, well, we women will not only equal it, but we'll do it more masculine than the fellas.
Yeah, and that's wild to me. One of the things I say to women in my field is, you know, you don't need to be a man to prove how woman you are. Like, why would you want to do that? You're trying to be something that you're not even designed to do. No wonder you're tired.
Yes.
And if you just did it in your own natural energy, in your own natural essence, your own design under God, it would actually come far more easier than trying to take on a role that doesn't belong to you. There is a magic within a woman that men don't have, and there's something that happens within men that women don't have. And if you just let it happen, it actually becomes a lot more easeful for you.
That's the thing, isn't it? Is the striving or allowing.
Yeah.
Yeah. As you said, the position that you're coming from, a biblical position, can be seen as old-fashioned, outdated. How do you counter that argument?
It's an interesting thing. I haven't had a lot of women say that's so traditional and that's so old-fashioned, because I believe that you can take a principle and a concept that works and is for the benefit of you, your marriage, your children, your finances, and your life, and apply it in a more progressive way. And that's wisdom. That's wisdom.
Yes.
So if you tell yourself that you can't do any of these things because it's too traditional for you, right? Then that's okay. That's your lifestyle, but that's not what's gotten me to where I am in my life. And at 41 years old, with two children and a divorce behind me, and my husband is not my son's father, I've had to take all of these concepts and all these principles and put them forward into my life in a progressive way so that I can create the life that I love and I've always dreamt of. And women don't want to do that. Well, that's okay. Then the fruit of your life will show, and that's fine. Enjoy your fruit. I'll enjoy my fruit, and we're good.
Yes.
We're good. No judgment, no shame. You do you.
Yeah, absolutely. You do you. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So we've talked about you started writing from a journaling perspective, and we've got your first contributory book. Complimentary. Well, it was compliment. It was a compliment to everybody else's. Your first contributory book in 2023. We're looking for your first solo outing, published outing as a book in 25. You've got programs, and where's the speaking coming in?
Well, we're here, aren't we?
My conference, my question is, when did you start speaking? How did you get onto the speaking part of life?
So that was you.
Oh, that was before me, surely.
Well, what, not really, actually,
Really?
sort of. When I first started the business, I really had an apprehension about being on camera.
Okay.
And speaking on camera and being in a public eye. I felt really uncomfortable with it because back then I was afraid of the judgment and the clapback of what I was talking about, because people don't talk about it anymore. And I knew that there would be some sort of pushback, and I felt uncomfortable. And a friend of mine who was also a client is heavily into marketing. That was her business model. And she said, Jen, you have to start talking to people, like more than just your one-on-one clients and more than just, people in private. She's like, you have to start putting out content of yourself, speaking to these things, because you have so much to say.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I ever made a recorded video to put on Instagram. I didn't even do it live. I recorded it on my phone. And I think I did it 15 times, and I did it with sunglasses on and all of the Wendy don'ts. And I was sweating and I was nervous. And then I finally put it out there, and she messaged me. She's like, Jen, the sunglasses. And I was like, oh. But as the business grew and as the following grew and interest grew, I kept getting the nudge. Every time I'd sit down and talk to God, he's like, you need to speak, you need to speak, you need to speak. And I would get these visuals of being on stage. And then women friends started to reflect that back to me without them telling me that.
Mm-hmm.
So then came Wendy. Then came Wendy, and that was probably the biggest initiation I ever had into speaking publicly. And I'm very grateful, because now I don't, freak out anymore.
Audience, I've seen Jen blossom. I really have. Quite apart from the Your Words Have Power event that we did, golly, that must be 3-4 years ago now. 3? Was it? It was after COVID, wasn't it? Yes.
It was after COVID, a good solid year before the book.
Yeah, so it must have been 22
at
22
least.
probably. Anyway, audience, getting back to that, Jen started off, yes, she was a little timid, and now you should see her. This woman packs a punch. She does not take prisoners. I've been on some of her calls with her clients, and oh dear, this woman has. My point is that I've seen her blossom as a speaker. Now, that was on a virtual stage. Here she is launching out onto. Have you done any other live stage work?
I haven't. No, my conference.
Here you are starting your first one, doing your own conference.
Yeah.
Go you. Super proud with you, my love. Well done. Excellent, excellent. So this is, you see, audience, this is where if you say to me, I can't stand up in front of people, you don't have to. To start with, if you can have a one-on-one conversation with somebody, like we're doing now, it can be called a podcast. This is a stage. You can get your message out in front of a much wider audience than the people that you can speak to physically. And if you're a bit scared about speaking in a group, hello, how many people are listening to a podcast? Depends on which show you're on, but you can certainly maximize your reach. So there you go. There is a progression. If you want to, you can progress onto a full live stage. That's exciting to see. Thank you. Thank you. So we've got starting to write when you were a young girl, and that's continued on. And you're also doing your socials as well, aren't you?
I do socials, yeah.
And you also do quite a lot of video work on socials now too.
I do. Oftentimes I'll even extract from my teachings, just because then I don't have to do it twice.
Yeah. Repurpose.
Yes, but I do guest speak a lot as well for my peers and other coaches and mentors out there. We're very communal and we support each other's work. So I show up and I guest teach in a lot of those spaces as well, and we'll extract from there too.
Yes. Yeah. So there's all of that going on. So again, audience listening in on this, please, you have the opportunity of getting your message out there. Don't keep it quiet. Be bold, be brave. Get your message out there, because your audience is actually waiting for you. And if you don't, not only do they lose out, you lose out as well. Aren't we after a win-win, not a lose-lose? Jen, we've got you working on, at the moment, your solo book. You've got this conference coming up. You've got your program setting up. You had a big year coming up, girl, haven't you?
You know, I guess it seems like it. It
Yeah.
doesn't feel overwhelming. It just feels expansive. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. It's about what you tell yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't it's exciting. And I think sometimes what happens is that we're in life and our business starts to grow and our message starts to grow and our audience starts to grow and we get freaked out.
Mhm.
And therefore we, the word I like to use is we collapse it, so we just,
Yeah.
we let it all fall in because it's too much and it's all of these things. And I believe that if you weren't capable of handling it, God wouldn't have put it on your heart. And of course, we have free will. We get to choose with what we run with. But, he can only bless you with the amount of, abundance and prosperity and all the things that you want in your life for the amount of effort that you're willing to be responsible putting forward. So that's, it's an equal measure. That's all it is.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got a lovely big year coming up. When your book comes out next year, let me know when your projected publication date is, and we'll have you back on, because I would love to see the progression, the evolution that you've gone through to get there. So precious. Tell me about, as we're kind of coming to a close, how do you embody your words when you go from page to stage?
As in my teachings?
Yeah. I mean, your teachings as they are at the moment in terms of your video work, but think about this in terms of also when you're going to be on stage for the physical stage in October. How do you embody those words as you deliver them?
In my opinion, I wouldn't be able to deliver them if I wasn't already embodied in what I was teaching. I think in order to be in integrity to your client and to your audience, your friend, whomever you're speaking to, you have to be living what you're talking about. People can teach concept all day long, and that's perfectly fine. We need people who teach concepts, but we also need teachers who live what they teach, because that is a frequency of truth. It's not just something that you know up here, it's something that you know in here. And people can feel that. So when you come in, you don't have to worry about, okay, I gotta tap into my alter ego and I have to pull out, whoever she is, because now she's in front of a live audience. It's just who I am all the time. It doesn't change. So when I get in front of women or men or whoever I'm speaking to, whether I'm on camera or I'm in person or I'm on a stage, it's the same. The message is the same. My delivery is the same. And I pull from my life experience as well to help solidify teachings.
Yes.
And I lace it in so it's relatable and understandable and more practical for people who I'm talking to. Yeah. And then they can take the conceptual thing that I'm teaching them and then a real life experience, and it becomes a married thing inside of them.
Absolutely. Because that's the thing. I mean, I'm sure you've heard of Les Brown. He famously said, never tell a story without a point, and never give a point without a story. So you've got to have that human interest to back it up, because as you said, the story embodies it, because back to what we were saying about the extended family, wisdom was passed on generation to generation through this storytelling. So yeah, fabulous. Something else flashed across my brain just then and it's gone. It'll come back to me, I hope. So yeah, we've got the totem. I know what it was. We were talking about the fact that we can teach concepts, and we've got to feel it. Sorry, I'm losing my brain here. But the energy between head and heart, where does it go through?
Yeah,
The voice. So if you are not speaking, connecting head and heart, it will show in the quality of your voice. And even if it's not something that the audience consciously picks up on, there'll be that subconscious thought that there's a little catch in her voice. There's something that's not quite right.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. So living your truth. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? That when you're off camera, you're just the same as when you're on camera.
I am. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've had friends or people I've connected with online for years and years and years, and then we meet in person, and they say to me, "You're exactly the same." And I laugh and I said, "Well, I hope so." Like
You're expecting something different?
Yeah, but in my own experience, I have had times where people you meet online or digitally and whatnot, you meet them in person and they are different. They are very different. And you don't quite know what it is, but the frequency is different. Something about it is different. Maybe you see them in their regular life and you're like, oh, I got snapshots, or as much as you wanted to give me, or as much as you could give me online or through the phone. But when you witness people in their life, then you get to really see it. So I believe that sharing your life as much as you feel comfortable with, I don't believe that the world is entitled to everything about you.
Yeah.
But it makes you real.
Yes.
It makes you real. So that when people get to meet you and really see who you are, there's an element of trust.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I was reflecting on I had a speaking gig at Cambridge University last week, and the guy who organised the event, he was on a flight back from, I can't remember where it was now, but the air crew elbowed their way through to the front of the security line, saying they had a flight to get to. And then out in the car park, he overheard them joking with each other, saying, "Oh, it's all right, we're never going to see that woman again, but so looking forward to having some time off." And he's going, "Really? You're still in uniform and you're joking about the fact that you've lied to a customer?" So yes, a little lack of integrity there. Yeah. I like to think I too am the same. I may be in my tracky bottoms as opposed to with a bit of lippy on, but I'm still me.
Yeah, I think it doesn't really matter what we're wearing. There have been times I've showed up to teach and my hair's in a messy bun and I don't have my makeup on and I'm teaching my class. And then there's times where I put more effort in because it's just real life. It's just real life. I don't want any woman to ever think that she's got to show up a certain way just to be present with me. That's not what it is. It doesn't speak to her heart at all.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's still the same frequency of you, regardless of the outside. It's the inside that's vibrating at that right frequency. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So we've got this big year coming up. We know where you started with your writing, where you started with your speaking. You have done both page and stage. And an even bigger stage is coming for you in October. And I am super excited with you for that. So we will make sure that those links are in the show notes. Now, that is a live event, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So people will need to get their tickets. Are the tickets on sale yet?
Yeah, they're on Eventbrite.
Excellent. Excellent. So we can, as I said, we can stick that link up for you.
How
exciting. Exciting.
It is exciting.
Have we missed anything off? Have you got any final words for us?
I don't. We covered quite a bit, actually.
We have really, haven't we? Yeah. Just as we've both covered quite a bit of geographical space in the last
we do. Yes.
So you're now in Miami, and that's where you're settling?
We're a little bit north of Miami. We're just outside of West Palm Beach, which is an hour and a half north of Miami. But for now, for this season, this is where we are, because I could not do the northern winters anymore. I was done. I didn't want winter anymore. Yeah. And so we decided to come relocate down here too. And We have a soul family down here,
Okay.
and it's been really lovely to settle in. So
Yeah.
it's been good for everyone.
That's the thing, isn't it? You can go anywhere in the world if you plug into your church family, your
Yes.
soul family. It doesn't take long before you feel enveloped, embraced. So yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, well, thank you so much, Jen, for sharing your From Page to Stage.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be with you, Wendy.
Thank you. For now, bye from us.